Hey guys, welcome to SAP Mix Studio Umbiamas, conectando Aruba com o mundo via vídeo podcasting. Conectar conosco, compartilhar ideias e histórias para nos inspirar e para conan abrir. SAP Mix Studio é plataforma de podcast na Aruba. Follow-nos no Facebook, subscribe no YouTube ou na plataforma de podcast preferida. Escute o podcast preferido que hora e onde está. SAP Mix Studio, powered by Credits, botou ideia? Credits educado e prepara a abo para ser um empresário exitoso. De business plan, guia personal e préstamo para negócio até com 100,000 florim. Bira para mês donho com Credits. Subway, passa na Subway para o sop, salada, wrap ou flatbread e mais fresco. Com 7 localidades rond Aruba, não está cerca de Ibo. Subway. Swing Masters, organizando events, conferences of weddings, Mr. de luz, sound, staging, DJ, trussing of flat screen, Swing Masters está claro para ser boa festa um êxito. Swing Masters. E agora, SAP Mix Studio é plataforma de podcast de Aruba, está apresentar.
Yo, you don't know, we going global with this thing. Boom, top class, university, what a global opportunity. Aruba University, take part, come join me. Together for the local experience, spread the culture globally nation. Let's build up the community, learning and teaching in diversity.
Hello, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Cherise. Oh my God, we're doing this.
Yes,
Here
it's
we
been a
are.
while. New year, new challenges, new stuff.
2020, 2022.
Yes, there we go.
Welcome to our audience. We are here in a total different environment.
Yes.
This is Straight Up Conversation. Let's start with that. And my name is Deborah van den Berg Alexander, and I'm here with my...
Charis Hundeli, colleague from the University of Aruba, and it's Straight Up Conversation about education.
At Soppy Mix.
Yes.
Different form, different place, different time. We'll be now hosting every Thursday, 3:30 to 4:30. So follow us on our Facebook page, follow us live.
On all our social media
On all our
channels.
social media. So for those who are new to the program and the setup, Straight Up Conversation about Education is a program that has as aim to talk about the educational trajectory of our...
Right. I think what we really want to do is encourage youngsters or everybody in Aruba to really think about higher education. And by listening to the trajectory of our guests, they would be empowered. And because after 2-3 years of doing this, everybody got so empowered. They said that, could you just mix it with the theme? And, pushed it up a notch. So now the first part of our interview, once our guests are interviewed, we learn about their trajectory that should be empowering, that is, and then we go over to a team. Did I get it right, Deborah? It's been a while.
It has been a while. So if you're a bit rusty, don't hold it against us. So let's start. We have two beautiful women here in the studio with us, and both of them no stranger to myself and to Cherise. Well, one maybe a bit. But the interesting thing about both of them is that they have similar qualifications, are not Aruba native, and are women with a financial background. So let's welcome into the studio Yvette van Veen and
Hello.
Shiba Suku.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good
Good
afternoon,
afternoon.
ladies. It's
Yes, and before you introduce us, I'm really charmed when we have women. The theme of today is women in finance.
Yeah.
Women in finance. Yes, we don't hear often about it, but yes, we've got this together, and we have one of the most prominent women who deal with financial aspect. But let's hear about their trajectory. So I'll pass it back to you, Deborah.
Yeah, and not forgetting that, in the month of March, we celebrated International Women's Day. I think it should be like a whole month, and every day is
There you go.
Women's Day, so let's just not stick to one day. But let's start this conversation because time goes by, and I know this conversation is going to be really, really nice. So I'm going to start with Yvette. So Yvette, welcome. Say a quick hi to your family because I know you have family most probably listening in from far away.
Well, I'm not sure if they would be listening, but we can try. Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. So hello to everyone who is tuning in.
So Yvette is, I'll share a minute
Yeah.
because she's a bit
Yes.
shy. Yvette is the financial manager of the University of Aruba. You've been doing this for now 3 years
Three
already.
and a half years, yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
originally from
Try.
Slovakia.
Slovakia.
Yes,
We got it
We
right.
got it right.
Very good.
Yes.
And I
yes.
know that, there's so many things taking place
Right now, yeah.
around there. But we'll come back to that. So that's Yvette. And we have Miss Shiba Suku. Shiba, give a shout out.
Hello, big shout out to everyone. I'm from Trinidad, so we like to shout out our people. So hello to my Trini people, my Arubian friends, my family, to everyone who's listening. I'm really thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me as your guest. Yeah.
So, okay, before we dive in, thanks for accepting it. We don't always hear so much about women in finance, or I think now compared to before, yes. And, so we sure would like to know how it felt, what the challenges were. But before we get that, I think it's important we take a look at your trajectory, because sometimes when people see you, they're like, yeah, they're lucky, they have family and they know blah, blah, but they don't know your trajectory. So before we go into the topic, we're going to share a little quote. We're going to call it, we're going to say, creating wealth comes down to discipline. So that's going to be our guideline for this afternoon. But first, we're going to listen a bit on their trajectory. So let's go back to Yvette. Tell us a bit more where you went to school, what you did, a few of your challenges, or not only challenges, but also what you achieved, your achievements.
So I come from east of Slovakia. That's where I grew up and where I lived until I was 18. So I went to high school there, and then I went to study to Prague. I went to study economics, so corporate economics, and specifically financial management. Sometimes you ask whether, some people already know what they want to do in life when they are 18. And I think that's one of the first challenges that you have to make that decision so young and you don't know yet what it means. So with me, it wasn't something that I thought, okay, I'm going to finance. It was more, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do at that age, so I thought maybe I can go study law or even political science. I was considering even like marketing or those kind of art school. So I had really a broad spectrum of interests, and I wasn't sure what to do. So it was more like I ended up with economics. So it was not a choice. So that's also what I want to say.
It wasn't at the end of the day, you had to make a choice, because it's not like you had a choice between two things, as the list is quite long.
Yeah.
What was the determining factor in making that choice? Was it because
I
you
think
thought
it was more to which school I got, kind of a thing. So
Okay.
it was really that, and also because I didn't have, clear paths. Like some of my schoolmates had, they wanted to be a doctor or this and that. I didn't have that. So it was more like what, And it sounds a bit, but I think it doesn't matter in the end. Because I am glad that I went this direction, because finance, and we can talk about it later, it gives you a lot of freedom. It gives you a lot of international opportunities. Finance is a universal language, so you can work anywhere in the world, basically.
I see Shiba shaking her head.
As long as you speak English. So I think from that sense, it was a good choice. But of course, later in life, you have other choices that you can make, and I stick to this choice, and I do not regret that. I really enjoy it. You get good at your work, and
And after you finished in Prague, then you ended up at a certain point in Amsterdam?
Yeah, correct. So I studied in Prague. I worked there a couple of years, and then I went to the Netherlands, to Amsterdam. I wanted to have some international experience, and my plan was to go there for 2 years.
And then,
and return. And it became 10 years. So, and then in Amsterdam, I met my Aruban husband.
love of her life.
Love of my life.
Shout out for your husband.
Exactly. And I moved to Aruba then after 10 years being in Netherlands.
Before you just continue the next question, those of you listening, and if you just listened in, this is true, a conversation about education powered by the University of Aruba. And I'm thankful that you're sharing that, because so often we say, no, in Aruba, the children don't know what they want to study. But it's a universal thing. You know, when you're 18, you're 18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the world is open for you and you just don't know.
Yeah.
And you just take a direction. And in your case, you end up in finance and you loved it because you see it opened the world for you.
Yeah.
Back to you with the tracks. And I just wanted to, those listening in Aruba from, look, it's a universal problem.
And the funny thing is because I know, Sheba a bit more. I know that Sheba, it was also not like your first choice, because things are different in Trinidad. So give us a bit of a rundown how your educational trajectory looked. I know you started off, stopped school, not stopped school, but you finished. But just tell our audience.
So I totally agree, for those listening, if you don't know what you want to do, just do your best all the time, because things change. So I went to school. I'm from South Trinidad, which is the countryside. So I went to school pretty far away, actually. My high school, I had to leave home at 6 in the morning to get to school on time, and coming from that, I would be honest, I come from a culture where the woman don't really go to school and become, like I'm the
professional,
only person in my family that went to high school and had a good education, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So after high school, actually, the normal way you would go is you do further education, then you go to university. For me, I started to work because that was the next best step. When I was going to school, I hated business. I did nothing business. I did chemistry, biology, geography, everything you could think about. I never wanted to work in an office. So for me, going into finance was a little bit difficult, because when I actually started ACCA, I barely even knew the concept of what a double entry was. But how I actually started was one of my first jobs when I was 18. I started to work as an office manager in an oil and gas company. And it was with really, really knowledgeable men who were in the business for a long time. And, the accountant, he was a little bit quite, older. So I started to help him. And then my boss said, Sheba, this is a good opportunity. Maybe you would want to study. And, he was like, if you go to school, I'll make you a deal. If you pass your exams, I'll give you back all your money. So for me, I love those challenges.
Yes.
So I started to study ACCA, and at that time in Trinidad, you can just go to school, you pay, you go to school in the evening. So working, studying, it's a little bit challenging. Yeah. So you have to be focused, you have to be dedicated, and it was like an investment. Okay, I spend my money now, I pass my exam, and then I get a bonus at the end.
Wow.
And actually, I never even really knew about the Big Four before I started to study. But then when I started to study, everything was, the Big Four and these firms. And, of course, as an accountant, your goal is to now work with one of these companies.
You see Yvette smiling.
Yeah.
Did you know about the Big Four before you started?
Because the listeners, I don't think the listeners know what a big, maybe they know about what a Big Four is.
Well, I actually, when she said it, I thought, okay, we didn't even introduce ourselves. So maybe the listeners, I didn't continue on my trajectory.
It's like, now there's more.
So in Amsterdam, I worked in the Big Four. So that is, I worked in PricewaterhouseCoopers, a company that is very famous for accountants. It's one of the 4 biggest ones. And I worked in financial audit. And then in Aruba, I'm the finance manager at the University of Aruba. And
that's one of the Big Four.
That's a Big Four. But the funny thing is, Sheba did internal. Now she'll talk about your new challenge. Yeah. But previously, PwC is now Grant Thornton. Yep. So that's to say you both have so much in common.
Yeah.
And funnily, I know that Yvette, your husband, used to work with Sheba. Yeah. So it's really also a small world, this small financial, community. Especially here on the island. So having said that, going through, you were saying you had learning moments, because of your whole trajectory is a lifelong learning experience. Yes. And I know for people in finance, accounting, you guys continuously have to educate. It's not like you got that degree. Yeah. You continuously are doing what you call permanent education, or there's another term for it.
Indeed, that is what lawyers also have, but also accountants. So we have the chartered accountant degree, and we have to collect points, let's say, every year. We have to educate ourselves. So Also,
That's
for
a good
those
system.
that think that studying is just the thing of a university, it's not. It never stops.
Continues.
And I think it's also something that gives you a lot of motivation to continue and to improve yourself and constantly learning something new.
But before we go to Shiba, I have a burning question for you. How was it? Because I guess you were maybe the first, second, or just 3 women in your class or in that area when you started to work. How was that experience?
No, I don't think. I don't have experience like what you said, that it's a male-dominated world. I think maybe it's a male-dominated world on top. So the partners and the, the really the top management is still male-dominated, at least from what I see. But the work, the auditors, the audit managers.
You had
there's-
female and
yeah,
male.
yeah.
But in your case, Shiba, you didn't have that because first, a woman do not continue study, or it wasn't a customary for women to continue to study. They would go take care of the kids, blah blah. So your start was different, or not?
I think maybe it was more in the past, it was like that,
Okay.
no? So traditionally, most people, women, would not go to school. But actually, when I was going to PwC as well, I talk about PwC and GT, it is woman dominated. We hardly
Alright.
have any men in that field, and I agree with Iveta, because at the top level is where the men are. And I think if you know of the work life in the Big Four and working in auditing, it's really a challenging job. So a lot of women, they tend to take a more, 8 to 5, 9 to 4 kind of job at that level.
Yeah.
So you see the top partners, for example, are men, but in the lower level areas, up to managers, it's mostly women.
Mostly
Yeah.
women.
In accounting, for us, accounting is always woman dominated. And in Aruba, it's the same because, at my office, for example, we don't have a lot of men. It's much more women, the proportion. Yeah.
Before, because Deborah's going to do, I know she's going to ask, what's the next step for us women to get at that top level? But before you ask that, or anything in that class, I know. But one thing you mentioned before, you said you weren't sure what you were going to do. You got a chance to work and so on. What would you say to those youngsters out there or parents out there from, is it okay for kids to go work? Because parents was like, oh, no, continue study. And then they pick something they don't really know what they want. Do you think having some working experience will be helpful in making choices?
Definitely. I think it is helpful in making choices because, like, for me, I chose that career because I started to like what I was doing. And I've known other people as well who started a career or they studied something totally different and then they ended up doing something else. I would even say, like, right now, so I started off as an external auditor. And then when I moved to Aruba, I came for 1 year. 5 years later, I'm still here. I couldn't leave. I love Aruba. But the thing is, you go into different things. Like in Aruba, I started to do internal audit. Now I also got qualified for internal audit. So I'm also a CIA. The thing is, I also started to work a lot with financial services. So if I were to say I finished high school in 2009.
Oh, wow.
And I'm still studying.
Right.
Last year, I finished another qualification. So it's a continuous process all the time. And that is beside the point that Iveta said, as an ACCA person and also a CIA, every year we have to do continuous learning.
Yeah.
So you have to register that you made these points. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that's so. Those of you who just tuned in, this is straight up a conversation about education, powered by the University of Aruba and powered by Soppy Mix, of course. And I really want to tag them. This is a new challenge, different settings. So Soppy Mix and the crew behind it. A shout out to you as well as having us here as university.
And for everyone listening in, I'm Deborah Alexander, and you, Sharice Bailey. We are both, workers of the University of Aruba, and we are happy to be able to have these conversations because we think education is something often that people think it just happen within the school walls, and I think it's something that happens all around you. We should be able in a bar talking about education because without And I'm not saying always a formal education,
Right.
even though working at the university, people would say, oh, you need to encourage formal education. I think the informal part of learning is a very important one, and we forget that everyone learns in a different way and are taught and perceive learning in a different way. So let's not forget that. But before we come back to the question on women at the top in finance, I just want to, break up the seriousness of this conversation and tell us something about yourself. I'll start with Yvette, that
Nobody knows.
nobody knows or your family knows, but for the outside world, it's like, no, never, Yvette.
What are you doing there? But that wasn't part of the script.
That wasn't part. So describe yourself. What would your friends say about you?
Yeah.
That's a bit more, easier.
Yeah, I think like the friends that really know me, maybe from back home, they would say adventurous and that's surprising.
I found her,
independent, flexible. I think that also comes now from all the moving and actually living now in the fourth country, calling my home. So that's what I think. What I think maybe you don't know is that one of my hobbies is photography.
Oh, I didn't know that. We don't know that. You see, audience.
We're not friends.
You see, audience.
Maybe if you want
Sometimes.
something, then
Yeah. So when you have meaningful conversations, sometimes
Yeah.
take time, because this is also part of the process of growth and education as well. Not only what you're actually doing as a professional, but you as a person, as a whole.
And I think, let me just, because Yvette said, when she said adventurous, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I met her in
Not be-
Parque Arico.
Yeah,
We meet up.
you see, our perception of people, and that's why
Right.
conversations are, again, very important, is that we really get to learn new things.
Correct.
And at work, Yvette, and I guess maybe it's also sometimes we say, having a financial background, we've had many conversations about being ethical within finance. And some people might say, oh, Yvette is not flexible. But when it comes to her work, she's someone who
correct.
is really... When
And
it
it's
comes
to
to
be
discipline
respected,
and
yes.
wants transparency and wants things to do, because it's money. And many
Yeah.
times you've always said it's not our money, it's not the university, it's public money that is being used. So in that sense, we see Yvette
Yes.
as someone who's very strict, and maybe people in finance you think, but of course
but
work is different.
maybe you compensate that in your private life.
Yeah.
And again, this is work exactly,
Yeah,
and
that's
that's
true.
what you
Yes.
have to learn. You have to be critical. You have to
Correct.
be very strict with the money.
Having said that, Yvette, I know there are challenges, especially on a small island of Aruba, where sometimes we wonder, we said we have to be strict. It is very important. You have to have finance freedom is to move forward, but that's not always the case. How do you deal with the challenges? You've worked different places and you've seen a lot. And, it's not that I want to criticize Aruba. It's just that let us be critical, autocritical, and look at where we are right now. And so how do you see it, and what would you say to help Aruba, and Aruba are we, everyone, citizens, to financially move forward?
Well, indeed, like I've seen different countries and a lot of companies, especially also in the accounting job. You look at a lot of into a lot of companies' books. You see their governance structure. You see how they deal with things, their internal control structure. And indeed, coming to Aruba, but I also cannot say, I didn't see all the companies. But to me, it's absolutely shocking that there is no requirement to publish financial statements apart from financial institutions. So our public, semi-public institutions, I think that would really help Aruba already if there was more transparency. And the transparency you can do with law, simply making it mandatory. And also that so many public and semi-public institutions are so many years behind in their financial reporting, not even saying the information is public, but even for their
Not
own
even, they
internal
don't-
review. So that is something that is really shocking for someone who is coming from, let's say,
Abroad.
Netherlands.
Yeah.
And before we continue on that note, and
Yeah.
I'll go the same question to you, Shiba, so people know, tell us something about yourself
Yes,
that our
yes.
audience definitely doesn't know.
Besides the roti dog,
Yeah,
but
she
that's
is-
okay. I have to taste this roti dog. Everybody talks about
Her
a roti dog from
is
Sheba,
wicked.
but
Okay, yeah, I'm known for my cooking skills in Aruba. But yeah, my friends would always say that I'm really passionate and, dedicated and a little bit soft, I'm a genuine I like to be liked kind of person, so I kind of always try to, do things for
best.
people to like, and, just to make everybody happy then. That's my personality. Something maybe a lot of people don't know about me is...
I like the facial expression. Observe everyone. Check out the facial expression.
I'm a little bit soft-hearted in terms of I write poetry.
Oh, wow.
Even I didn't know that.
Deborah doesn't know that. I mean, I have some trophies in my house. I was really, in Trinidad. When I was in Trinidad, I was a member of the Poet Society of Trinidad and Tobago. So,
okay, we culture, listen up. We have a new poet in the house.
So that's something I really like to do. I still
wonderful.
do it now and then. It's just my way of expressing myself.
Correct.
And all my friends say I'm a nerd because I like to read. But I just love to read.
Yeah.
It just really relaxes me.
You bring some thoughts to mind that sometimes we kind of, we judge a book by its cover. Yeah. You would think, oh, she's in finance, so she's very this and she's very that. And then you see they have a life. They have a life. They have a personality. So, don't let us judge. It's their job. It's their responsibility to do what they have to do. So that is why they have to be strict because, like you said, financial discipline is extremely important. But anything else you'd like to share before we ask how you deal? What are your, thoughts on the financial situation and how we can move forward?
No, I think, it's what Iveta said, especially being, as I come from, a big part of my career was being an auditor. And you're not the favorite person. When you go to the client, they're like, oh, the auditor is here. You swear you're the police or, something like that. And, in Aruba, I totally agree. And actually, it's not only in Aruba, sometimes it's amazing to see how far back you are behind with your financial statements. And actually, I will jump over into our... at Grant Thornton. So I used to be largely involved in external audit. And one of my extra tasks I did from PwC and into Grant Thornton is learning and education. And recently we just launched a learning and development academy.
Oh,
competition. No.
No. And I say it because
awesome.
One of the first, because we just launched 3 courses and our idea is really to share our experience and our expertise and knowledge with the whole community. And I don't mean clients or professional people alone. I mean everybody. So one of the first courses we have actually is an introduction to financial statements for non-finance staff. Because I think it's important for people, who are just... I don't want to say ordinary people, but you know what I mean? People who don't have a financial background to understand what is a financial statement, what is it, how can I use it? So the course was actually designed to, to show you how to prepare and how to interpret your financial statement so you can understand what's happening,
Okay, so I'm just going to recommend because, of course, we can't do free promo for our Grant Thornton, but all I would want to recommend, what's the website where people can go to for more information?
It's grantthornton.awe.
Okay, and then they'll find out the dates and everything to follow. And I think that's really nice. I mean, I made the joke about competition, but I think having more platforms on the island where we can support development of the professionals in whichever area, as you said, you have finance for dummies. This would not be the case, but it's nice to see that you guys are giving back all this knowledge that that you have.
The thing is, we really see the need. We see the need that people want to learn more about things. It's actually, we're going to focus not only on finance and non-finance stuff, we're focusing on tax, we're focusing on people management, we're focusing on leadership, a lot of soft skills. We can even meet with companies or groups to say, okay, we want to do this team building event and we want to learn about this. Can you help us, Because even like with some companies, they want to train their people. They want to train, their groups, but they just don't have the avenue. And we think that we're really excited about it. You can tell.
I can see that. I can see that. Because if I may, one of the things Iveta said, like having that, I'm going back to having that financial discipline, but then the short-term and the long-term planning, that seems to be very difficult for everyone because, It's like we're not, with anything that you're doing, it's be a strategic thinker. Not only think for today, think of what you're going to do the rest of the year, second, third, fourth year. What are your thoughts on that? Because I'm always trying to not only looking at a university platform, and those of you who just tuned in, this is straight up conversation about education right here at Suppy Mix and powered by the University of Aruba. So, Yvette, what could you tell us a bit on planning, on what you've seen, and what you would like to people to take away from this conversation in terms of short-term, long-term planning in finance?
You mean Aruban finance?
Yes.
Well, I think there's some improvements that have been made. So, for example, the government of Aruba is now asking for a longer term planning. I'm not sure what they're going to do with that. I think definitely you need to think in at least 5 year ahead type of planning, especially with Aruba having quite a lot of debt and having to repay a lot of interest. That should be the first focus to either refinance those interests or loans with higher interest, or try to get rid of that if you can. But of course, it's very complex and it's very difficult, and to do that on the country finance, it's difficult, but you can try with really having a very good control over the financials, and that starts with having up-to-date financials, transparency. And I think one more thing that is very important in that transparency is also the role of independent press, no? Because one thing I'm missing, because I'm coming from Slovakia, there we also had a lot of issues with public financing, with corruption in the past, and nowadays a lot of information is public of all the public institutions, and it is not only financial statements, but for example, register of all contracts that these institutions enter into. So any journalist can go in and see, and those are the steps you can take to promote transparency, and then those journalists have goal to basically scrutinize that, question that. Why did you enter into this contract? So it is a way to go, but
and it requires quite a lot of independence actually as well in a small island. But I would like to say it has been acknowledged in the press in the past that thanks to Iveta, we are really up to date. And I've seen you these days walking. I'm in an audit, and the long hours.
Don't speak to me today.
Don't speak to you. Then she gets a bit cranky. But
she's focused.
We are very grateful as colleagues, and I think as workers at the University of Aruba, we are proud when we see that things are up to date. It gives us also motivation to contribute, because when the beginning of the year, she said, well, actually ending of the year, she says, but the beginning of the year, I want your, your year report. You're like, I don't want to, but I know I do it, and I try to finish it within the time, because I know the importance that it is, and the transparency and the credibility it gives us as a university as well. So thank you, Iveta, for that. You guys put in long hours, and I know from you, Shiba, long hours, as you've said, is one of the reasons why women make choices along the way. That it takes a lot. It takes a lot. How do you remain, sane in that process?
And wanting to grow to the top, but then still trying to find that balance.
I think you really need to know, first of all, what you want. Where do you want to grow towards? And for me, it's a little bit more challenging. So my experience wouldn't be like every other person, because I live in Aruba alone with a 10-year-old who's like 16 years old. So, so...
That's the youth,
So that's a little bit difficult, because from back home, when I worked late or I had to work the weekend, my mom was there, her dad was there. There was a lot of people to look after her. But in Aruba, it's a little bit different, I drop her to Debbie sometimes, so she can go party too much. But no, seriously. I mean, it's not impossible. I come actually from Trinidad. There's quite a few women, I call them power women, at the office in Trinidad that really push to the top, and they work hard and they dedicate. And in Aruba too, I also see a lot more women going to the top. Before, I would say, yes, predominantly men partners, but now you see a lot more women in a lot more leadership roles in Grand Thornton. If I look at the mix between women who hold the global, international, spots, there's a lot of women involved. So I think women, and we all know women, it's a little bit more difficult for us to manage everything. to get to the top, but we are finding a way to do it. And, you know, we're finding the balance, and we're finding a way to manage, you know, the family life. And I always remember, like, as a woman, you have to go to work and try to be this entrepreneur, but then you come home, you have to clean,
you gotta
cook,
be mommy.
wash, take care of the clothes, you know, kids, everything. So it's all about balance.
Balance. Thanks for sharing that. But I also read, for instance, I was looking at a few financial agency in America, and what they did, they formed a network of women who have the same background and the same positions, and how is the networking of women in the financial area here? Is that something that needs to further elaborate, or because they've formed the network, right, or established, because they formed the network, different women in different positions, different companies, and they kind of used it as a kind of a counseling towards each other, and in that way helping each other to see, you know, how they can move forward.
Well, personally, I'm not involved, but I know of this group, I think Women Empowering Women, that I heard about, that I know a couple of friends who are in this group. And actually myself, I was thinking about it because I come from a background, I was a former Rotary member, you know, which is kind of also with men, you know.
Yes.
But I found out about this group, I think, last year, so I started to follow them. And yeah, for me, it seems like a really nice thing for women in Aruba. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to, you know, getting more knowledge into that group, because from what I see, it seems like a really nice
setting to support each other and to move forward.
And I like that, you know, woman empowering woman theme. So
I just had a question going back to, and maybe Vettel could say something about that as well, is the assumption that is made that once a woman climbs, you know, she becomes very masculine, or we tend to think, you know, they've become less feminine. Have you, I don't say experienced that, I've seen that, but there's always the perception, the comment that once someone has, you know, reached the top and they've really worked hard, as you said, because there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into the type of work you guys do, especially the long hours, that they become a bit not masculine, but demanding. Is it something?
There's this book, Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. I don't know if you guys ever heard.
Interesting.
Have you read that one?
Let me just Google that.
Read it. Yeah, but I don't totally agree with the, you know, you become different, but I would say if as a woman you feel like you have to speak out more and demand more to be held seriously. Like if you go, and I would say from my experience in this field, at the level I am, senior manager, going to board meetings. When you go to a board meeting or audit committee meeting, sometimes you're the only woman there. And you really have to empower yourself in that meeting.
That's it?
You really have to stand up, you know, for yourself. So you feel a bit, I would say, maybe intimidated a little bit. But if you know yourself and you know what you're about and you know the work that you have to, it's easy. Okay. So I don't think you have to go be, you know, more macho.
It's a
like, you don't have to
misconception
make yourself
again.
into a man if you're in a higher position. I think it's a misconception that people think if you're on top, as a woman, for example, if you have to talk to a man who's a manager or a supervisor, you should be like a man to talk to him. No, I don't agree.
I totally embrace what you're saying, because
yeah, I think so too. So I think in the past maybe it's a thing of a past a little bit. I think nowadays, and I also think you shouldn't become a man in order to be successful. You should stay a woman and still, you know, build on your strengths and on your opportunities that gives you as well. So.
In the month of February, we had a lecture with Christy Hammer. With the book Quit Being So Good. So that's also how to be an unapologetic woman. And I think it's something definitely as this book that's worth reading. And there she gave 3 tips. I'll just hold it up like that. She gave 3 tips as well. You know, we as women should take up space. You know, stand proud.
Stand all right.
Also be first in everything. You know, so let's not wait until, let me see who else. No, if you know it, be first. And then also the third was seeking helpers, which is a bit, you know, seeking
forming the network
around you. So really an interesting book, which I'm sure it relates a bit to this. But for us as women, not to be apologetic about who we are and our success. And it's actually a quote that we got from a male colleague. He always said, I'm going to be unapologetic about my success.
Yes,
and we were like,
yes,
really?
and about your finance.
That's
Don't
right.
be ashamed because you're doing good.
Yeah.
But, just because we're also promoting lifelong learning, I'm just going to repeat this. Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. The author is Louise Frankel. Yes, unconscious mistakes women make that sabotage their careers. So we would like to encourage our listeners and viewers to please, look, because it's a continuous process. It's a continuous. So thanks for sharing that. But I want to go back one more, if it's okay. I think we still got some time.
Got some minutes.
You said GT is actually building on educating a finance to the nation. And I'm going to ask you, and I'm also going to ask Yvette, one of the things sometimes Deborah and I talk about is the pension. The pension here, or, people is like, I got to wait for my government pension, or I have this and I have that. If you would have an opportunity to say to everybody out there, because people wait until they're 60 and then say, I have to think of my pension. And then usually it's not part of the process at work that you get educated on your pension. Is GT doing anything of that, or what would you say to our viewers and listeners?
I think that's a good topic, but I just want to say that used to be in the past again, that people used to wait until they're much older to start thinking about their pension. If you look at the new millennials and the Generation X, or what they call they're retiring at
33, yes.
So they're thinking about it
Correct.
now, and I think that is a good topic to throw out to a lot of people, because even myself, I would tell you, I'm also very young, So I'm also thinking...
Make sure we underline that.
Just know, I'm also thinking for myself, with my partner, pension opportunities.
Correct.
Because I will be honest with everybody, you cannot depend on that government pension. You cannot depend on that company pension. It's not going to sustain you for
in your
the
lifestyle.
life at
And as things are going and becoming more expensive. And
Correct.
So you need to start to think about, and I think maybe during COVID time, people started to really think about the future. I would say, about not just individuals, but also companies started to think about projections and budgets and what's going to happen, et cetera, and, planting a little garden and, thinking how to, how to be, okay, one of my goals personally, actually, with my partner actually, is to live with as little expenses as you can. And I think a lot of young people are also doing that. You hear all the concept about small houses and, and minimalism and living out of a suitcase and 3 items. So I think...
Not
Not the suitcase, but the traveling part. The suitcase or the traveling part.
A lot of people are busy with it. So I think maybe it's more for us, more of a knowledge-based gap. But I think the younger people are way in front in terms of
well,
forward.
if you have to let me hear your, how do you look at that, and what do you think that we should be doing?
Preparing for the future financially.
Well, I agree. Like you should definitely get informed of your pension plan that you have with your employer. Indeed, many people don't understand, but you can always ask, right? So the company should provide you with explanation of what exactly is being done for you. For example, for our University of Aruba, we have APFA. And APFA is willing to come anytime to give a presentation to employees, to answer questions. So you should do that. And indeed, you shouldn't start asking these questions when you're 60, but much earlier. And also I agree with Shiba, what she said, and don't rely on that. Of course, maybe that's it. Maybe that's all you're going to have. But if you have any opportunity to invest and to, maybe build up, because the sooner you start, the bigger impact it will have when you're actually retiring. Or maybe you can retire early. But I agree with what Shiba said. So, but you can educate yourself as well. You can ask questions. You can be curious about your pension. Yeah. Nobody reads pension statements, I think, generally. Even financial people don't. So, but maybe you should do that if you're concerned.
And I think, and we've discussed this. The book Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Rich, yes,
we've had this in the past. I'm sure you read it as well. Yvette,
I heard about it.
That was really an eye opener for me in terms of how to invest. But I think just looking at where things are going realistically, and before we came to the show, I was talking to a colleague, and she said, well, my money doesn't reach me as before, and then you start becoming very critical to where you spend your money. I think that's already where we can save a lot. I know of myself, but others who, during the COVID, we saved a lot. We
saved more than ever.
I mean, of course, it's good to support your local restaurants and everything, but sometimes simply as, cooking a meal that goes 2 days instead of, spending it, it could help. But that's just...
And I think like when we started out this conversation about the financial discipline is also, what do you teach our children on financial discipline from? Do we give them everything? Or, we all have kids and it's always like, okay, do we do we know? Could we do this? And, depending on what your possibilities are, you're like, okay, let me think twice. Do I have to give him an iPhone or not? He has to work for it. And often you would hear people like, oh, no, we can afford it to why? And I was like, no, the child has to know that, to have something, you have to earn it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Because sometimes it's we talk about a pension. Let's go back a little bit from our youngsters, because we do have a few programs on the island, Plaka Chiquia. I must say shout out to Mr. Groeneveld. He's really trying to educate the kids.
So my question is to turn it around is how do you apply, so with your financial knowledge, how do you teach your kids already to become
my kids
savvy?
That's a big sigh, like, oh my goodness, don't ask it.
No, I agree with you. I don't think kids should get everything they want, in a sense. You have to teach them the value of money. But I think my kids are 4 and 6, so I think it's a bit early to, let's say, not to restrict them. Still, I don't think they should get everything they want. That's fine. But to really teach them and to make them work for the money. But I think later in life it's definitely really important to really understand that how much you just have to work for those 15 florins or 30 florins. So,
Shiva, how do you apply it?
So, I have, my daughter's almost 10, no? So I would say this because I remember some time ago, a couple of years ago, she was asking for something and I said, yeah, but I don't have any money now. And she's like, that's okay, Mom. You can just go to the bank and put your card and get some money, no?
Right.
So we started to teach her. So actually, I give my daughter a small allowance every month, 25 florin. And I tell her, okay, from this money, you can spend 5 florin for anything you want. But the other 20 saves until you really need to get something that you need. And I remember when we go on vacation as well, because, everything they see they want, we give her an allowance and we say, this is your money. You can buy anything you want. When it's done, it's done. So choose wisely. And I really see her. She's really like, oh, if I buy this and I have this and if I have this, So it's really stimulating her to know, listen, Mommy doesn't just have money to take out from the bank every time she needs something. And also teaching her the financial discipline of you have to save. Because, yes, you can have money and you have money, you can buy things and also buy things for everybody. But you have to have some money saved for the future. Correct. So I do that with her. And I know also, not just from me, because a lot of places, they are busy with trying to teach kids financial literacy in school, because I don't remember learning about that in school, right? So I think it's important for us to teach kids something like that, like for me, I will share a secret. I have an envelope approach, and I learned that from my partner. No, you put, okay, this is for this is for grocery, this is for cash, this is for this, because I would tell you ever heard this saying about the shoemaker has the worst shoes?
Yes.
Yeah. So sometimes financial people...
Could you explain it? Because all of viewers may not know, because I can see that. It's like, okay, that's
so
the
shoemaker. The shoemaker is experienced in fixing shoes, but he never has time to fix his own shoes.
But the same thing with contractor. People in contracting, their house is the last to be looking.
Correct.
And it's the same thing with finance. People would think, oh, she's an accountant. She should have everything organized. She should know this and she should know... But because we have this mindset of, okay, but I can just use it and put it back next month. Or I know my projection, I'm going to get this, I'm going to get that. Yeah. You tend not to really budget properly and stick to that budget, even though you know, and that's what you teach everybody to do. Yeah. It's difficult. So that's what I mean by that sense. Like, you really have to find a strategy that works for you and really stick to it.
Yeah, that's a very
sense.
Wow. Yeah. Wow, Deborah, we covered so much things here. I'm
This
kind of summing it up. Is like we talked about the key elements of well-functioning financial system. We looked at broader in the world. We looked at Aruba. We looked at home. At home, we talked about having the right mindset, the strategic thinking on having the plan. We talked on educating the younger ones, but also looking at ourselves. And we also looked at don't judge a book as its cover. Now, because you're in the finance, that means to say that, you should judge a person by what they're doing. But it's the discipline we also talked about. Wow. We covered quite a bit. I must say.
Quite a bit. And I know for both ladies, you're like, what do I need to do? But as you see, it's just a conversation, and we hope that you enjoy it because, without you realizing, it's almost been an hour of conversating, and we hope that those listening in will enjoy it. Those looking at this, video in a later date would enjoy. And if they have any questions, feel free to approach Sharisa via cll@ua.away or at osa@ua.away.
Yes.
Send us a note, send us a shout out. Maybe you have a remark, maybe you have a story that you would like to discuss as well on the program.
Or just, place a comment. Place a comment on whatever social media, if it's the social media of the University of Aruba, of Soppy Mix. We are in partnership right now. We are collaborating, so it will get to us, and we will make sure and answer that.
Yes, and as you've heard from both ladies, they both started off with a different, not knowing, but ended up where they had to end up. And we're not sure where you will end up still at the end, but the most important thing is that you're open to the learning process. So thank you all for listening in. Charisse, it was another wonderful straight up conversation.
Yes, and Yvette and Sheba, I really want to thank you for sharing that knowledge and also engaging in a meaningful conversation. And we invite our viewers and our listeners, please, when you see us and finance, it's not too difficult to talk about it. Any last words? Nothing is too difficult. And believe me, the University of Aruba created this platform so everybody can have their own opinion. If we agree or don't agree, that's about university and about academics. Your opinion matters. Okay, so thank you very much, Shiva.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. It was great.
Okay,
here we go.
Here we go. So see you next week, Thursday, 3:30 to 4:00, right here at Soppy Mix, straight up conversation about education, sponsored
by the University of Aruba.
Have a super afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Yo, you don't know. We going global with this thing.